when you're confronted with something that has as much dense information in it as a photograph, the key to tackling that is to take a look in, your toolbox, if you will, like what you already know how to do, and see if it can be reasonably applied to what you're working from, rather than copying the photograph. So it's a different approach entirely. There could be areas in the back of this piece where wet into wet would work. Wet into wet might work down here. There are areas in it where we could drag through the paint, with the end of the brush. Those kinds of things. So it is really more or less an analysis of looking at photography and saying, well, I have this method and I have that method. Would that method apply to this? Could that method be applied to this or that? And, and work out reasonably. So it's not getting in and, copying every little piece of foliage. I mean, I'd start back in here with wet into wet, and we drop paint in there, and, let happen what happens back in there. Then we're going to learn one more masking technique today with this bird in the foreground. But, we have already methods to deal with everything that we'll be confronted with in this little photograph. All right? So, put you at ease. I am going to start with a horizon line, and I'm going to use where the water hits the bank, which is down here about a third of the way up. All right? So, as always, don't work edge to edge. And we've got a horizon line down here that's about a third of the way up the picture plane. And that line is representing this horizon line right here, or where the water hits the bank. This bird, it's the main character in our image here. So I would suggest starting with the feet off the horizon line, because it's standing right there at the edge of the water, and I think that would be the best place to start this, just with the 2 feet running up. The bird itself, if you start with the largest mass, it's going to be kind of egg-shaped, but pay attention to the fact that there's an axis line that runs on a diagonal here. You see that central axis? I have it drawn into the photograph here. It's this axis line here. So this, the body of the bird, main body of the bird, is narrower down here and then broader up here. So it's broader here, narrower here, and it's at this slant. This kind of egg-like shape is running at a slant. That sort of slant. And of course we have some plumage, feathers out. And the neck of the bird is just a big S You know, if it helps you to draw this in the interior first, go ahead. You know, like in you're in the interior and you're making a light mark for it, then it has to have form though. So it's basically a big S. In terms of the other drawing that we're going to do in here, have I given you enough time with this? You need another second or two with the drawing?
Yes.
Okay. Let me give you another second. Alright, look, we have, I think it makes sense to indicate where all this green stops back here, which is just below where the bird's legs enter into his body, so you know, indicate where this green area stops. And this bird's reflection down in the water, which is basically kind of that only thing we have is the body of it, really. And it's basically the egg-like shape again, but you know, at this angle this time. We're not painting in it, we're not drawing in any of the background. All right, paint will, the way we handle the paint will deal with all that. So we're not going to worry about any of the background in here. But we are going to draw in these fronds in the foreground because it gives a nice sense of depth and space to this thing. So we have a really long frond here. It's, I guess the biggest one runs well up the picture plane, so we're going to indicate that one. want to indicate this one that overlaps the bird. A little bit of overlap in that bird because it'll push that bird back in space if we overlap it with something. So we'll indicate that one. This one here. And then we're going to put in a few more. You don't have to count these. You can put in more or less than I'm going to put in, but we'll put in a few more in the foreground. They could kind of bend and twist some if you want. Just put a couple in so that they're there. That'll help us to create depth in this thing, you know, from far foreground into the background. This is, we've used tape, this is a mask. We have used wax, candles as mask. This is a masking fluid painted on to paper to mask out areas. So we're very loosely, we're not worrying about filling in where you don't want to fill in initially. So this is a masking fluid that's painted on and allowed to dry. Basically, like a rubber substance. I didn't have to go up there until the beginning and just all over like this, but here's yours. You just kind of pitch that up and I'll look at all myself. Yeah. All right, we've used masking tape. We've used wax as a mask. This is also a mask. It's a masking fluid that's painted on. It's sort of a rubbery-like substance. And now you can listen. The reason I gave you a brush is because this stuff ruins a brush. once you put a brush in this stuff, you have to throw it away. So we had these little cheap brushes that I bought at, the dollar store. There is just no means of getting this stuff back out of a brush. So once a brush is committed to it, you don't want to put an expensive brush into stuff. All right, we're going to obviously mask out this bird, so we're just painting this masking fluid over the bird. And don't leave it on thick, you don't want to pile it on, but be sure that you cover the bird well. So we're covering the bird with the masking fluid, which is going to mask out the paint, the entire bird, plume, tail, feathers, whatever it is.
It's supposed to have chunking. It's supposed to be chunking.
No, try to avoid, if there's chunky stuff in it, try to avoid that. But I don't know. So we're painting out the entire bird with this. We're painting out its legs. Just for a short explanation, we're painting out everything we've drawn. All the fronds and the reflection of the bird. So all that stuff's going to get painted out. So the reflection of the bird and the fronds in the foreground. That chunkiness is from it drying on the plate. So we might have to put out some fresh stuff on your plate.
Well, it looks fine when it goes on, but I feel like it's the paper marking up in the painting.
It pretty quickly becomes this rubbery-like substance. So we're painting out the bird and all the fronds in the foreground.